to all audience to please remain stand up as we are going to continue our agenda with prayer. We would like to invite all audience to pray according to your respective beliefs and let us bow our heads in silence. The prayer is started. And the prayer is ended. Thank you. For the audience, you may please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, we will now proceed to the report of today's event and greeting from the head of the committee. Therefore, I would like to invite Dr. Sagung Putri M.E. Purwani SIMH to deliver the report. Time and place are yours. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Good morning. Distinguished Dean of the Faculty of Law, Udayana University, Professor Tim Singh from the Melbourne Law School, respected lecturers, and dear students. It's my great pleasure on behalf on the organizing committee to welcome all of you to today's Stadium General with the theme Legal Research Methodology in the Digital Era between Doctrinal Tradition and Technological Innovation. This event is a continuation of the academic collaboration established through the Memorandum of Understanding between the Faculty of Law, Udayana University, and the Melbourne Law School, the University of Melbourne. We are deeply honored by the partnership which opens new opportunities for academic exchange, research collaboration, and mutual learning between our institutions. We are especially grateful to Professor Tim Lindsay, one of the most respected legal scholars in the Asia Pacific region, for his willingness to share his insight with us today. The purpose of today's Stadium General is to help our academic community, especially our students in the undergraduate program in law, Master of Law, Master of Notary, and doctoral program in law, to explore how legal research can adapt to the digital transformation of our time. While the doctrinal approach remains fundamental to legal scholarship, the rapid development of digital tools and data-driven methods and challenges us to ranking how we define, collect, and analyze legal information. Finally, on behalf of the community, I would like to express my sincerely gratitude to everyone who has supported the preparation of this event, our academic staff, students, and partners. Without further delay, I now invite the Dean of the Faculty of Law, Udayana University, to officially open today's Stadium General. Thank you very much, and I wish you all an inspiring and meaningful discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sagung. Excellency, distinguished guest participants, ladies and gentlemen. Next, we will respectively invite Professor Dr. Putu Gede Arya Sumertayasa SAM as the Dean of the Faculty of Law, Udayana University, to kindly deliver his welcome speech and officially open today's Stadium General. To our Dean, time and place are yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Selamat pagi. Distinguished Professor Tim Lindsay, dear colleagues, students, ladies, and gentlemen. It is great pleasure to welcome all of you to this Stadium General organized by the Faculty of Law Udayana University. I am very happy to see so many of you here today to discuss a very important theme, legal research methodology in the digital era between doctrinal traditions and technological innovation. This topic is very relevant for us as legal scholars and future lawyers. Around the world, technology is changing how we live, work, and also how we understand law. Digital tools, online database, and artificial intelligence now play a big role in legal research. But at the same time, the traditional doctrinal method remains potent because it helps us think critically about justice, fairness, and the meaning of law. This event also continues our strong relationship with Melbourne Law School, the University of Melbourne. Last year, I had the honor to sign a memorandum of understanding with the Dean of Melbourne Law School, the University of Melbourne. This partnership shows our sales commitment to develop legal education, research, and collaboration between Indonesia and Australia. On behalf of the Faculty of Law, Udayana University, I would like to sincerely thank Professor Tim Lantai for being here with us today. We truly appreciate your support and friendship. I also want to express my deepest sympathy for the passing of your father and mother this year. May their memory give you strength and peace. We hope that next year, Professor Tim, you can see somebody not only as your partner, but as a member of our academic family. With that, I am pleased to officially open today's Stadium General. Thank you, and I wish everyone is productive and inspiring session. Thank you.
So, ladies and gentlemen, that was the opening ceremony for today's agenda. Now we would like to invite our dean, all vice deans, head of the UP3M and also UP2M Faculty of Law University, and our moderator to please stand up because we're going to take a photo with you all. Thank you. To the committee, please. Aja, Bapak. Oke. Akan saya pandu. 1, 2, 3. Sekali lagi kita akan berfoto juga bersama salah satu panitia. Sembari itu, ya. Baik. 1, 2, 3. Baik, mungkin dengan gaya lainnya, gaya meroket. Baik. 1, 2, 3. Sudah. Terima kasih kepada Bapak Dekan, Bapak Wakil Dekan, moderator, dan juga koordinator. Berikutnya kita akan berfoto bersama peserta, ya. Mungkin bisa dibantu. Now we would like to have a photo sessions with all the participants here, joining us offline and also online. So Prof. Tim Lindsay will also be part of this photo session, okay? Thank you. Oke, mohon berkenan untuk berdiri bagi hadirin yang telah bergabung secara offline dari kursinya masing-masing. Ya. Kepada panitia, kami persilahkan untuk mengambil posisi. Baik. Now I will guide you to take the photo. 1, 2, 3. Okay, another pose. 1, 2, 3. And then with pose meroket. Yeah. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Thank you very much for all your participation for these photo sessions. Public. Well, ladies and gentlemen, finally we arrived at our main agenda for today's. I would like to inform you that the presentation for today's speaker is going to be facilitated by Bapak Dr. Imade Budi Arsike, SHLLM, as the moderator. I would like to read the brief CV of Bapak Dr. Budi. He is a lecturer as well as the head of the International Law Department at the Faculty of Law, Udayana University. He obtained his bachelor's degree from the Faculty of Law, Universitas Airlangga, while for his master's degree from the Faculty of Law, Maastricht University, the Netherlands, and his doctoral degree from Faculty of Law, Universitas Udayana. He is also the managing editor of the Udayana Journal of Law and Culture. Now, without further ado, we would like to invite Dr. Imade Budi Arsika to please start the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the Master of Ceremony. Mr. Dean, Vice Dean, all respective colleagues here. Good morning, everyone. How are you today? Hello, all participants. Okay, Professor Tim Lindsay, am I audible? Yes. Okay. First of all, allow me to express our deepest condolence for the passing of your parents, as expressed by our dean a few minutes ago. I hope you're doing fine there. I think it's now spring in Melbourne.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Um, it is our honor to continue the cooperations between Udayana University Faculty of Law and Melbourne University Law School, Melbourne Law School, and today we are going to uh, present you as one of the greatest Indonesianists. Yeah. So here we have participants who attend this event offline here at the campus, but also we have other participants who join the event by online means. To all participants, allow me to firstly introduce Professor Tim Lindsay for law scholars in Indonesia. I think everybody knows him because he's one of the uh, law scholars which influence the way of thinking of law scholars in Indonesia. So Professor Tim Lindsay is one of Australia's leading experts on Indonesian law and has advised governments, business, international organizations, courts, and legal practitioners in Indonesia and Australia. He is Malcolm Smith Professor of Asian Law, Redmond Berry Distinguished Professor and Director of the Center for Indonesian Law, Islam and Society at the Melbourne Law School. He holds a Bachelor of Law, Bachelor of Arts, and Bachelor of Letters from the University of Melbourne and completed his PhD thesis in Indonesian Studies. This is the reason why he's called as the Indonesianist. A specialist in wide range of aspects of Indonesian law, including public law, criminal law, commercial law, and family law. Professor Tim Lindsay also teaches and researches Sharia or Islamic law in Indonesia and in the Southeast Asia regions. With regards to the topic he will present today, I would like to inform to all audiences that he has published more than 100 publications. So please give big applause for that achievement. And he is a founder of and also an executive editor of one of the greatest journal, so the Australian Journal of Asian Law. Without further ado, I would like to invite Professor Tim Lindsay to present the presentations with the topic of publishing your research internationally. Yeah, please, Professor.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Imade Budiastika. And thank you also to Bapak Dekan dan Wadek for inviting me to appear here today. And thanks, of course, to my good friend, Professor I Gusti Ngurah Parikesit Widiateja. Or we call him Parry because it's a lot shorter. So Parry, thank you. Thank you all. It's good to see all my good friends in Bali. And I just wish I was in Bali like all the other Australians. Unfortunately, I'm not in Bali, but I do look forward to seeing you all in Bali next year. So thank you. Today, I'm going to talk to you about publishing your research, how to prepare an article for publication, and in particular, how to have your article accepted by an international journal. So excuse me while I just share my screen with you. So I think you can see my screen now. The reason for me talking on this subject is that I have for 27 years been the editor of the Australian Journal of Asian Law, as was just pointed out. And that a picture of me chained to my chair working on editing your articles. So over 27 years of editing articles, including many from Indonesia, I've learnt some things about common problems that people face in writing articles for publication internationally. And what I want to do today is make some suggestions for you to think about as you prepare your articles for publication. The way I'm going to do this is by talking directly about what it is that editors look for. And I'm doing this speaking as an editor myself, who receives articles submitted from around Asia and the world and has to select articles for publication. And we reject little over half of all the articles that we receive. In other words, we publish around about 40% of all the articles that are submitted to us. So the question is, which articles do we accept and which ones do we reject? And the first principle I want to emphasize for you is that the most important thing in an article submitted to a refereed journal is to have a clear simple argument. So an editor and a group of editors together, when we look at articles, the first thing that we're looking for is whether we can identify a clearly stated, very simple argument. And if we can't see that, then you will probably not get past the first stage. Now, it's easy to say that a clearly stated simple argument is required, but what is an argument? What does that mean? And this is where it gets a little bit difficult, because an argument is not a description of your topic. It's not a description of the problem you're going to write about. And an argument is not a research question. And the argument is certainly not the case study or data set that you're going to use as the basis for your discussion. So I just want to be really clear about this. Saying that your topic is, for example, law reform in Bali, that is not an argument, it's a topic. Or if you say your article is about obstacles to law reform in Bali, that is still not an argument, that is a problem description. And if your research question is how to reform law in Bali, that's a question, but it's not an argument. And if your data set is a survey of laws in Bali that need reform, that's a data set or a case study. It's still not the argument. The argument is the big point you're going to make about that topic or that problem. So it's probably fair to say that the argument is the answer to the research question. So as well as developing a research question, you always have to develop a research answer. And that is what we are looking for when we see your submission to us. We find out what the topic is, we find out what the problem is, we see what the research question is, but do you tell us the research answer in your argument? And in that example I've given you, the answer or the argument would be this XYZ is the obstacle to law reform in Bali, whatever it might be. So I'll just try and summarize this. A clearly stated simple argument will identify the topic and the problem. It'll tell us what the research topic is and what the research problem is. It will also tell us a clear research question. It will only briefly summarize the most important evidence or data set. And then, most important of all, it will give a very clear answer. And this is the thing that editors look for most of all. And unfortunately, I would say that most of the articles we receive to review do not have a clear argument. They do not have a research answer in them. Now, it's not easy to develop your research argument and to identify it. If you want to look for where that research argument might be located, it should appear in the abstract. So we know what the abstract is. The abstract is usually 100 or 200 words at the start of the article, which summarizes the whole article. And of course, it will tell the topic and the problem and the research questions and the evidence, but the abstract should also summarize the argument. And of all the parts of essay or articles that are problematic when people submit them, the abstracts are usually the worst. And most abstracts do not actually tell the reader what the argument is. So please, when you're writing an article or preparing an article for submission, spend a lot of time on your abstract, because it's the first thing that editors read. Whatever you do, please don't just cut and paste from the introduction or conclusion. It doesn't work. Write an abstract from zero and take a lot of time over it and get it right. Because if your abstract isn't good, they probably won't read the rest of the paper. So abstract is very important. It summarizes the whole article, and it should identify the research topic, the research problem, here and here. It should state the clear research questions, summarize the relevant evidence, but then the abstract should tell us exactly what the clear answer is. And you should be able to say that in just one single sentence. There's no big idea in the world that can't be reduced down to one sentence. And so the editors are looking for that one sentence in your abstract. And this is a good way to test yourself. If you can't summarize your whole article in just one sentence, then probably your argument isn't very clear. I'll just say that again. It's really important. If you can't summarize your whole article in one sentence, then your argument might not be clear enough. It doesn't matter how complicated or how sophisticated your article is, if you should be able to summarize it in one sentence. And I would suggest to everybody that before you submit an article to a journal, you test yourself. Can you summarize that article in just one sentence? So I've put some examples up there for you of what I mean by one sentence. So the law on whatever it might be, I put XX there to you could insert whatever it is you're working on. It could be criminal law or human rights law or spatial planning law, whatever it is. The law on XX in Indonesia is ineffective or dysfunctional or whatever it might be because of XX. And that's the cause of that problem. And you need to state it. Therefore, reform in the shape of whatever the reform is needed, but it will face challenges because of so-and-so. Now that formula, that sentence, is a summary of many, many, many articles that I read. In fact, I would say probably around about 75% of all the articles that I've ever read on law could probably, on Indonesia, can probably be summarized by that first sentence, putting the variables into where I have the XX. Another couple of examples, the theories of whatever. This is if you're writing a theoretical article, for example, influence on courts. The theories of so-and-so have been influential on courts because of whatever factor. However, changes to something mean those theories are no longer relevant and the court should now adopt such and such an approach. So that's an example where you're arguing for a jurisprudential change of how you might summarize your argument. Or let's say that you're looking at a case study of a particular town or a particular kota or kabupaten somewhere in Indonesia, and you're looking at registration of marriage, just as an example. It could be anything. So your article might be, marriages in kabupaten ini atau kota itu are rarely registered, terdaftar because of, and then you give the reason. To change this or to reform this, a particular reform XX is required, and this can be implemented through whatever it might be, undang-undang baru, peraturan baru, or whatever. The point I'm trying to make here is that almost any article on any topic can be summarized in one sentence, and you need to do that before you submit. Because the editor might only read your abstract before making a decision to reject it. They're looking for a clear argument, and they want to see that your argument makes your article original. And remember that the case studies you're using, the data set you've identified, and it might be comparative law, it might be field work and interviews, it could be data from an annual laporan tahunan, it could be anything. Whatever it is, that data is there to support your argument. It's the landasan for argumentasi. It is not the argument itself. Please remember that data and case studies are not the argument. They support the argument. So let's look at how you might structure an article. And there are different ways. There's a very wide range of ways in which you can structure an article that you might be writing. But this is a very common structure that many people use in writing an article for publication. Of course, we have the introduction and the conclusion. That goes without saying, but it's what goes in between that really matters. So quite often the first section after the introduction deals with the background. So the introduction outlines the research problem, the research answer or hypothetical answer you might give that you're going to test in the article. It also introduces the methodology you're going to use and so on. It summarizes what you're going to be doing. But the next chapter might, or next section of your article might then give more detailed background or identify the problem that you're going to focus on in more detail. Then after that, the next section might be a literature review, or it might be a discussion of the methodology you're going to use. It doesn't have to be. The things in this section here can also just be discussed in the introduction if you want. You only really need this section here if you have particular issues with your literature review and your methodology. And then we come to the most important part, the substance, the substantia of your article. And these chapters, and they're usually about 3 or 4 chapters or sections, can be done in different ways. You can either deal with a particular issue as your organizing approach or a particular data set as your organizing approach. And I'll say a bit more about that in a moment. But you look through whatever the first point is, and then you analyze it, the second point, and you analyze it, the third point, and you analyze it. Now, I want to make a recommendation to you here. It is a good idea not to separate analysis out. It is better not to have a section here that says analysis. You should be doing the analysis as you do each point. So don't give data and then give analysis, because your reader will have forgotten what the data is before they get to the analysis. So try and build the analysis into each of the chapters or sections of your article as you go along. I'll just repeat that. Try not to separate your data from the analysis. Build the analysis into the data and the examination. Now, depending on the sort of article you're writing, you might want to have a recommendations section after you've done your analysis. You don't have to have that, but if you're writing a law reform paper, then you probably will want to include recommendations there. And then finally, you have your conclusion at the end. I'm going to say a little bit more about introduction and conclusion in a minute. Now, this is not a rule. You don't have to write your article like this, but this is a very common structure that many people use, and it's quite a logical way of approaching the problem, the law issue you're going to discuss. Now, I'm just on the previous slide here. You can see I've written issue or data set 1, issue or data set 2, issue or data set 3, followed by analysis. That's because you really have 2 ways you can structure articles in those substantive sections in the middle. You can do it according to the issue or main point you want to make, or you can do it by the data set that you're focusing on. And either approach is a reasonable approach, but you do have to make a decision about which one you're going to follow, and don't muddle them up. So when I say issue 1, I mean the major part of your argument that you're going to make. And very often I have found that most articles tend to have about 3 big points, big argumentative points that they want to make. It's not a rule, but I've just noticed over the years that it's not usual to have more than about 3. So these might be the 3 main components of your argument. It might be 4, it could be more, but most often it's 3. And then these are your data sets. Now, when I say data set, I really mean the evidence that you're using to prove your argumentative point. So it could be interviews you've conducted with people, or it could be analysis of laws, or it could be literature reviews and selected quotations from writings, or it could be a comparison of different countries. Whatever it is, it's the evidence that you're using to support the issues. So you can either organize it by the issue with the data backing it up, and it could be in any combination. It doesn't have to be one like that. Or you can organize it by data set. So let's say that you did field work in 2 kabupaten. Then you might have the data set from kabupaten 1 here, the data set from Kabupaten 2 here, and then you discuss the argumentative points about Kabupaten 1, and then the argumentative points about Kabupaten 2. By issue or by data set. Either of those will work. It depends on your article. But you need to make a decision. What you don't want to do is jump from issue to data set back to issue to data set in a confusing way. And I could take questions about this later if you need more explanation. The next point is that each section of your article should read like a mini article. So you need to structure each section that you write quite carefully. There needs to be an opening, an introduction to each section. And then you need to have the main points you're making and the data that supports it, or the other way around if you want. And then you need a closing part of the chapter. So in a way, an article is made up of a whole sequence of little mini articles, each proving a point or dealing with a particular data set. And I think this is often forgotten. I think people writing articles just run through all the information as fast as they can without reminding the reader what each section is about and then drawing a conclusion at the end of it. And it's important to do this. So structure each section like a mini article. And if you do it, that provides what we like to call bridges and signposts. Bridges are sections between sections that explain what's happening in the article and what the next thing you're going to be doing is. So your closing part for each section will say, in this section I have shown XYZ, and therefore in the next section I will show ABC. So the closing section becomes a bridge to the next section. It's a bridge leading the reader in. Having discussed so-and-so, I will now discuss so-and-so. Or because we've covered this, I will then do this. So you are both leading the reader into the next section of your article and you're providing signposts about where you're taking the reader through the article. Bridges and signposts are really, really important. You have to be gentle to your reader. You have to guide them and remind them and help them find their way through your article. So bridges and signposts, which are a result of structuring each section like a mini article, are really, really helpful. Because you know what you're writing in your article, but the reader doesn't. And you need to stop, slow down, and explain what you're doing so that they can follow your argument. Otherwise, they feel like they're lost in the jungle of words. Okay. So just to go back, what I've discussed with you so far is the importance of an abstract, of being able to summarize your whole essay in just one sentence as a way of ensuring your argument is very clear, because it's an argument that editors want. I've also discussed some different structures based around issues or around data sets, showing you some of the optional sections you might want to insert depending on the sort of article you're writing. And I've reminded you that each section should be like a mini article, and you should use bridges and signposts throughout to guide and help the reader. Now I want to talk a bit about the introduction and conclusion. When you're an editor and an article comes in from somewhere, you read the abstract straight away. If the abstract is terrible, you probably just stop there and don't go any further. But if the abstract is good, then the next thing that the editor will read is the introduction, the pengantar, and then we read the conclusion of the article. And if those two are good and they make sense and they match up the way they should, then we will read the whole article through from start to finish. So you have 3 stages to get through: abstract, introduction, and conclusion. So that means that of the text of your article, the introduction and the conclusion are by far the most important parts, and you have to get that right. So here is a little bit of a advice that you may find very surprising. Never write the introduction first. When you sit down to write your article, never ever start with the introduction. It's a little bit ironis, but the last part of your article you should write is the introduction. The last part that you should write is your introduction. That's because how could you introduce something you haven't written yet? It's impossible. You can't introduce something that doesn't yet exist. You have to write the article first, and then you can come back and do the introduction, because only then do you know what it is that you're introducing. I hope that makes sense. So what you should do is write the substantive parts of your article first, then write the conclusion, and then go back and write the introduction last of all. Just one more time, never ever start with the introduction. It doesn't work. So write the substantive parts of the article, then the conclusion, then the introduction. So jumping back to this typical sort of structure, you write this section here first, then you write the conclusion, and then, only then, can you write the introduction. And that means that your introduction is relevant to what you're writing about, and it's going to more clearly state your argument. If you write the introduction before you write anything else, they are generally really bad and will probably have to be rewritten in any case. Okay, so that's my big tip. Tip number one, write the introduction last so you know what it is that you are introducing. And I have a few more tips to think about as you write an article to submit to a journal. This is for the introduction, when you finally get round to writing the introduction. One of the problems with a lot of introductions is that they are very, very, very boring. And you need to do something in the introduction that makes the reader think, this is interesting. I want to read the rest of this article. And we call this the hook, the kaitan. It's the hook, which is the thing that catches the reader like a fish and drags them into the article. So what do I mean by a hook? I mean something at the start of your article that relates it back to something we can all understand. And that might be, for example, if you're writing about criminal law, it might be a particular case which was very, very bad. Or if you're writing about divorce law, it might be about a divorce that resulted in a very poor outcome for one of the parties to the divorce. Or it might be a very controversial news event that occurred in recent times. So, for example, if you were writing about the recent demonstrations in Indonesia, you might start with the tragic death of Afan. It's a way of humanizing or personalizing the abstract legal issue that you're going to discuss and bring the reader in and make them interested. So you can personalize the argument. Sometimes an anecdote or a personal experience is a good way to open the article if it relates directly to the argument. Or you can problematize the argument by showing some dreadful event or major problem that demonstrates the issue the article is trying to resolve. So a lot of people start their law articles with a particular event, a case, a person, or something, a news report that really identifies the problem and brings the reader in. And that's why it's a good idea to write your introduction last of all, because you'll really understand your article by then, and you probably already have an example that you can use as that hook at the start. So you could say, on such and such a date, this thing happened. It was terrible. It's hard to explain why it happened, but this article will try to explain it and make recommendations for reform to prevent this from ever happening again. That's a good way to write a law reform article. So that's my second tip. My first tip is write the introduction last. My second tip is try to make the introduction interesting for the reader by problematizing or personalizing the argument. Another tip for everybody, which is please be really careful to avoid repetition. Repetition, repeating the same words over and over again is a really big problem. It's one of the major problems that we see in articles submitted from Indonesia, where authors make a point, write something else, come back to that point again, and keep repeating the point 4 or 5 times throughout the article. This is a really serious problem. I was once told by one of my academic seniors when I was a junior academic, he said to me, repetition is death. It's a little bit harsh, but it is a good way of expressing the view that article editors and referees, the way they see repetition. Repetition is a major problem. Provide the data once, draw the conclusion you want to draw from that data, the point you want to make once, and move on to the next point. Never, 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 never exactly repeat the same point or the same data set. You could refer to similar ideas, but you cannot repeat the same words or the exact same point again. The only exception to that is in the conclusion. But even in the conclusion, where you are providing a kesimpulan, a summary of all the article, you still need to be careful to minimize direct repetition of the same words. So repetition does not emphasize, it actually weakens your work. One way to do this is to pick up a key word in your argument and do a find function search on it and see how many times it comes up. So if you're working on, for example, narcotics law reform, how many times do you use the word, let me think of a good word, criminal sanction, the phrase criminal sanction. How many times do you use that in your article? If you use it 100 times, you probably need to think of another way of saying that, because it becomes very painful and boring for a reader to have the same words or phrase used again and again. It's like a hammer hitting you. So you need to start saying penal sanction or punishment rather than criminal sanction in order to provide a break. So repetition of ideas is bad, and repetition of words is bad. Some more tips. This is my 4th tip. Be very, very precise in what you are saying. It's not good enough to be close. You have to be exact. So remember, for example, that many, most, and almost all is not the same as saying all. If when you're writing an article, you say, all people agree that so-and-so is true, that cannot be right. It is impossible for that to be true. Even if you were to say all people believe in God, well, they don't. There are atheists in the world. All you need is one person who does not agree with that position, and you cannot say it's all. You can't say, for example, all people would agree that a democracy is a better system, because there are many people who don't agree with that. They're probably wrong, but you cannot say all unless you can be absolutely certain that there is not one single exception to that rule. And this is a big problem because people say all when they mean almost all, or even just many. So be very careful. If it's possible that someone could pick a hole in that argument, then you can't say it. And give exact names, exact places, and exact dates. The principle is this: if it is not exactly right, it is totally wrong. If it's not exactly right, it is totally wrong. And that's going to knock your article out if they can find an error like that. And there will be people looking for them. There are referees, there are editors, they're all looking for these problems. So be very, very careful. If it's not exactly right, it is totally wrong. Spend time doing fact checking before you submit. Another tip for writing, please don't assume knowledge. Many authors in Indonesia assume that everybody knows basic facts about Indonesia, and so they don't explain them. They don't say who they don't say who Muhammad Hatta was, for example. They talk about the new order, but they don't say what Order Baru was. They'll talk about independence. When was independence? 17th of August 1945. That's what you need to say, because you have to understand that many editors will not know anything at all about Indonesia, absolutely nothing about Indonesia. In the same way that if you had an article submitted to you from Finland, you wouldn't know anything about Finland. So please, Indonesian authors, don't assume that everybody knows all the basic facts about Indonesia. Most of the time, the editors will not. And the rule is that if you don't explain something, then it's assumed you don't know. So please explain institutions. Don't just write KPK, for example, Komisi Pemberantas Korupsi, with a translation, Anti-Corruption Commission. Explain institutions, explain events like the Proclamation of Independence, and people. So you do it briefly, but you must do it. Full names and translations of Indonesian names for institutions and things. Don't write Mahkamah Agung. Write Mahkamah Agung, bracket, Supreme Court, bracket. So assuming knowledge is a problem because for Indonesian authors, because I don't know why, but they assume that everybody knows everything about Indonesia, but they don't. Okay, referencing. I'm going to say a little bit about referencing before I start moving towards the end of my presentation this morning, and thank you for your patience. Referencing is a very important scholarly skill. It's part of being a scholar. You have to get it right. You need to spend time on referencing. Every source that you refer to must be referenced, and a pinpoint reference, that is, the page number, is required. One of the big problems with articles we often get submitted from around the world is that people just list the journal article or the book. They don't say what page number, and that's pretty much useless. If you don't have the page number, it's just going to come back to you and they're going to say, please provide a page number. So it's going to be much easier for you if you put the page number in at the time you're doing your research, because otherwise you have to go back and do your research all over again, which is very annoying for you. So perfect referencing is absolutely essential. Errors are just not tolerated by international journals. If you can't get the referencing right, you might be rejected for that reason. There are lots of different referencing systems. You need to check online. If you're looking at a particular journal that you're submitting to, go and check online and see what referencing system it uses, and make sure your article complies with their referencing system before you put it in. We receive lots of articles, and it's obvious that the authors have not even bothered to look at our referencing system. So we just say, see ya, reject. Or we send it back to them and ask them to re-reference it in accordance with our style guide. It's just lazy. So make sure you familiarize yourself with the referencing system of the journal you're submitting to. In the bibliography, the list of references at the end, it must be complete and it must be accurate, and it really needs to be double checked. A lot of people do this wrong, and it's very annoying, and it slows down the time for your publication. So if you make a claim, you must support it by evidence, and you need to do that with evidence that's properly referenced. Spend time on referencing. It's part of the way in which your skill as a scholar is assessed. And you're just going to cause yourself a lot of delay and time if you don't get it right. And it's much easier to get your referencing done at the start correctly than to have to go back and redo it. Okay, I have just a couple of warnings now before I finish up my presentation. Things to beware of. Hati-hati. If you write an article that's just based on a small data set, for example, field work you've done in one small town, kota, and you might just have interviewed only people in that maybe it's a desa, or let's just say you look at just 4 or 5 judicial decisions Or maybe you've interviewed just 20 respondents. This is going to be a problem because, generally speaking, if you have a very small data set, it's not going to be enough evidence to prove any argument you want to make. It's purely an example. It is not probative. In other words, it doesn't have value as a way of proving your argument to be true. Oops, I've got a typo. That should be strong reason, not string reason. So the problem with a small data set is it may be not much use and it may be not a sound basis for writing your article unless there's a very strong reason for a small data set. It may be that only a very small number of people are affected by this problem and you want to write about those people. Or it may be that this problem has only occurred in one particular desa and that's why you're looking at that desa. So there are some cases where there is a reason for a small data set, but generally speaking, you can't really rely on a small data set to write a big academic article. It's not going to work because there's no probative value. The second warning for you is comparative studies. Comparative studies where you compare a legal issue in country A with country B. You know, like Indonesia compared to Australia, or Indonesia compared to America, or Indonesia compared to Belanda, or Prancis, and so on. Think about whether you really need to do a comparative paper, because comparative studies are not really particularly useful or meaningful unless there's a really good reason for the comparison. Is the reason for the comparison because the two legal systems are similar, like Indonesia and Belanda? Or is it because they've got a similar political context? They're both democracies, or both emerging democracies, or are both authoritarian, or whatever? Or is it because one of them copied their law from the other one? I don't know. There has to be a reason. Maybe you've chosen the country as a comparator because it has the best practice example of that sort of law. Maybe you're comparing contract law in one country with country B that has the best contract law system in your belief. But whatever the reason for the comparison, there has to be a good reason, and you need to explain what that reason is. You can't just do a comparison for the sake of a comparison. That will be rejected. Comparisons can work if there's a good reason for comparison, but if it's just a comparison for no reason, then it will be rejected. So 2 warnings. Watch out for small data sets and watch out for comparative essays without a reason. My last slide for you today is about being willing to draft, and redraft your work. No published article was ever written in just one draft, one go. To write a good article, multiple drafts are necessary. You need to write and rewrite your work in order to make sure it's of the quality necessary. And I myself, I redraft everything I do between 8 and 10 times. I do version 1, version 2, version 3, version 4, version 5, until it's really polished. You just have to be aware that the first version you do will not be good enough. Guaranteed. You have to keep repeating it until it's at that high level of quality. So multiple drafts are necessary. And as you do your drafts, edit your own work repeatedly. Be very critical of your own work. Read it. Don't just do it on the screen. Print it in hard copy, mencetak in hard copy, and read it. Because it's sometimes you see things when you read it on a piece of paper that you don't see on a screen, on layar. The second thing I'd really suggest to people, and this will sound a bit strange, is to membacakan your manuscript. By that I mean read out loud, not just membaca, but membacakan. Because sometimes when you read out loud, when you membacakan, you can hear things that you don't necessarily see when you're reading it. And also I suggest you call a friend. What I mean by that is you ask a friend to read your paper. Get a friend to give you input on the paper because they will see things you don't see. So as you do your multiple drafts, draft, redraft, draft again, you edit it yourself, You read it in hard copy on paper. I would suggest you read it out loud and you get a friend to read it as well. And that will all help reach that high level of quality. You'll be amazed at how much your work will improve with every redraft. And as you do it, ask yourselves the questions that I've been suggesting to you today. Is it clear? Is it interesting? Is it new? Is it a contribution to literature? Is there no repetition? And is it fully referenced? And I'd also say, is it tightly structured? So, semoga success. There's my tips and warnings for writing articles for submission to journals internationally.
Thank you very much, Professor Tim Lindsay. Please give big applause. Professor Lindsay. So, Professor, very interesting. Now, actually, during your presentations, I mean, me myself also, something like a self, a checking of my previous knowledge, because there are several tips from you. One that even you say a little bit ironic, but this is very important tips that about writing introduction and conclusions. So Professor Lindsay said that just write the conclusions before you write the introductions. That's very important because normally, I guess here we usually start with the title, abstract, introductions, and go on and go on, and finally conclusions. But this is the very important tips for us. And also you mentioned never, never, never repetitions. Yeah. So everyone, I checked there are 118 participants who join this event online. And also there are around 30 participants join offline at the campus. This is now I'd like to continue the event with the question and answers. I would like to invite first the participants who join the offline session here. Anyone, please, you may raise your hand, either the students at the bachelor, master, or doctoral of law. So please, anyone who would like to start? Please. Yeah. Okay. Raise your hand. Okay. One. And is there any other participant also from right side here? Not yet. Okay. Please, Bapak. You. Please come here because the microphone is here. Please kindly mention your name, full name, and your study program here.
Thank you very much, sir. My name is Nanang from Notary Program. Professor, it's been an honor to have you here, and I've learned a lot of things from your presentation. I'm interested in, by the way, I'm interested in posting my journal in international, but feel not confident enough. And because I was always thinking that my point of journal is not that strong. It's like a lack of point and data. So do you have any suggestion that can build the, what do you call it? Like, I'm not brave enough. That's the main thing. And this is the most common problem with Indonesian student. And you can find it anywhere because we are not been trained. We are not been used to write in international journal. Thank you very much, Professor.
Thank you very much for Nanang from the Master of Notary. Professor Tim Lindsay, I guess that's clear. Would you like to respond?
Thank you. Nanang, yes, thank you for your question. I understand. I understand your concern and your anxiety. It's not easy to start. I remember the first article I ever wrote, I was sweating I was so nervous and worried about writing it. It's a very frightening thing. But you have to start somewhere. Some point, some stage, you will write your first article, and it might as well be now. You can't start a 1,000-mile journey without a single step. So you need to take your single step to get started. Well, what I would suggest to you is that you sit down with some friends, and each one of you has an idea for an article, and you explain your idea to your friends, and each of your friends has to challenge you about it. And you take it in turns to do this. And those challenges will help you try and formulate your answer, because the challenges they give you, the questions they ask you about it, are probably going to be the same sort of questions that an editor or a referee is going to ask about your paper. So what you can do is note the big questions, note down, mencatat, the big questions that your friends are asking you about your proposed topic. And they can actually become then substantive parts of your article. The main problem for you, Pak Nanang, is you have to work out what your structure of your article is going to be. And having that sort of a meeting with friends where you each challenge each other is a good way to come up with your structure. Another way to go about it is to ask yourself, what are the 3 most important points about the issue I want to cover? And just list those 3 important points, and then turn those 3 important points into the 3 substantive sections or bagian of your article. Don't worry about the introduction. Don't worry about the conclusion. They can come later. Write those 3 points up as the 3 major parts of your article. And as you do that, you will start understanding your argument better, and then you'll be in a position to articulate the big points you're making. And it may be that your 1-sentence summary or your abstract is really just reiterating your answers to those 3 points. And everything will follow around that. But it's not easy, but you do have to start at some stage, and it might as well be now. And as I said earlier, most articles usually only have about 3 or 4 big points to make. If you can work out what they are and start writing them up, then the rest of it will probably fall into place. The other thing I'd say is don't be afraid to be wrong. It's often the case that as you write an article for the first time, you realize your original idea was incorrect. That's actually normal, and it's a very good sign because it shows that you're thinking. So usually when I write an article or a chapter in a book, I always change my structure as I go through. I work out what I'm going to do for a structure. I start writing, and then I realize, no, it could be done better. And I cancel my first plan and start again. That's quite normal. It's a good sign. Many people, when they do their PhD thesis, completely change their topic, sometimes 2 or 3 times. When I wrote my PhD, I wrote 40,000 words, and I realized my topic was wrong, and I had to start again. And I threw them out, mulai dari awal. Itu mengapa saya botak. So, yeah, don't be afraid to be wrong. It's part of the writing process is to learn as you write and to change and develop. So, yeah, just get started. Mulai aja.
Thank you very much, Pak Nanang. Pak Nanang, so any feedbacks or okay? Yeah, thank you very much, Pak Nanang. We have another also participants from this side. Please, over here. So kindly mention your name and your study program, please.
Good morning, Professor. My name is Sinta Winaya. I'm currently in the program for notaries. I'm currently doing my own research on Rapat Umum Pemegang Saham or general meeting of shareholders, specifically on their investments, and still in a very abstract structure. And currently, I have a writer's block. So I need an inspiration on, or can you give me an advice for a specific vocabulary, keyword, command word that you are probably looking for in your published articles or for your certain argument or titles? Because like I do have a fixed structure or like what I want to have for my structured abstract and my structured research, but I specifically don't exactly know what would make it sound hookable or interesting. It'd be really nice to have your
Okay,
advice as
could I jump in? I need to ask you a question. What is the big point you want to make about the shareholders' meetings?
well, specifically for notary, we make the acta or the the deed, and that for specifically in the notary case, there is a certain condition of where if in any case that anyone gave not exactly the right explanation, we still have to write it down on the deed. And in a way, there is a responsibility that whatever we write in the deed has to be for sure in terms of the right thing that is in the field. So that's what I'm kind of debating on whether that is specifically written on the rule or whether do we have to follow the rule exactly? Like, as far as I'm aware, what we write is what people or what our clients given to us. And if there were any mistakes or if there were anything errors in the field, are we responsible for that error or anything that
Okay,
is?
so let me just stop you there. Do you think you should be responsible, or do you think the law needs to be changed?
Well,
Just pick
in
one.
terms of specifically, I would not be liable for it because I am just writing on what they have been telling me. So it should be that the law should be regulated more specific on. That is what I think.
That's the answer.
But like,
That's the argument. So the argument is you could, sorry, go on.
what do you think would be like the specific hook or like a certain keyword or command word that I could put in?
Yeah, okay.
That
So
would
you, all right, your article would be a law reform article. It would say, here is the problem, here is the law that causes the problem, and here is a recommendation. That's how you would structure that. So recommendation for further law reform. So problem, relevant law, possible reform. That's quite an interesting article to write because you identify the problem, you look at the legal issues, and then you identify a solution to it. So when you start that off, you could start it off by showing a case where a notary has put into a deed something that's clearly wrong because that's what the client said.
Yes.
So you'd find an example like that that shows a bad story, and that would then make the whole rest of your article then relevant to dealing with how that position could be avoided in the future.
Okay. Okay.
So you need to think of it not as a description of the law, but as an analysis of a problem that needs reform. And to make this really a useful article, you need to suggest a reform at the end of it.
Okay. I'll take on some of my research again. Thank you for the advice, though.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Miss Sita Winaya. Wow. It is a glad for us that this is not only a studium generale, but something like a coaching clinic for you. So it's very lucky for you. You got I think you can now structurize your draft of article, right, Sita? Thank you, Professor Lindsay. Yeah. Any other participants would like to, let's say, clarify or asking any questions to the Professor Lindsay, please? From this side, anyone? You even may raise your question in Bahasa Indonesia because Professor Tim Lindsay can speak bahasa Indonesia as well. He understands bahasa Indonesia. You may
Tapi
use.
jangan pakai bahasa Bali.
Okay, please. Okay, the lady. Yeah. In bahasa Indonesia. In bahasa Indonesia, try to use the very long sentences. Just kidding.
Selamat siang sebelumnya. Perkenalkan, nama saya Niko Mantriatnyani. Saya merupakan mahasiswa program S1 Ilmu Hukum. Jadi pertanyaan saya, pertanyaan saya, bagaimana pendapat Bapak apabila untuk mahasiswa hukum sendiri menggunakan AI atau artificial intelligence dalam penggunaan artikel mengenai hukum, yang dimana kan di AI itu sendiri sering banget memberikan informasi yang tidak pasti. Namun banyak saya lihat dari teman-teman saya itu menggunakan AI untuk menulis seperti paper ataupun seperti makalah untuk tugas di hukum itu sendiri, karena mereka merasa dengan menggunakan AI kita bisa mengerjakan tugas dengan cepat dan baik juga.
Oke, maksud komantri yang mengerjakan teman-teman Anda ya, bukan Anda ya. Oke ya. Professor Lindsay, I would perhaps you can hear because this is quite fast. So komantri
No, it's okay. It's fine. Yeah, jelas. Gak masalah.
Okay.
So the maybe I should ask AI to give me a good answer for your question. So I would be very, very careful about using AI for legal writing, because AI makes mistakes a lot. Because what it does is it doesn't actually think. It collects information from websites. And a lot of information on websites about law is incorrect. And a lot of material on social media about law is total rubbish, completely wrong. So if AI is gathering in information from these sources, and often it tries to predict answers, it quite often makes serious mistakes in law. For example, it gives nomor pasal yang salah completely. It also sometimes invents undang-undang yang tidak ada. So there have been cases in Australia where advocates have used AI to make submissions to the court, and it has given perkara, putusan dari beberapa pengadilan, which are completely palsu. So it's dangerous to use AI in legal writing because it gets it wrong, and you won't be able to tell where the mistake is unless you really know that area. And if you really know the area, why not just write it yourself? So if you use AI for an article that goes into a journal, it will probably have serious mistakes, is my warning. But I would say one thing: I think it's difficult to write in a second language, really difficult to write in a second language. So I think AI can be very helpful for orang Indonesia yang menulis makalahnya dalam bahasa Inggris. You can use AI to menyempurnakan bahasanya, tata bahasa, dan lain-lain. I think that's quite a useful use. And what I would say is people from Indonesia write really good articles. They're good legal thinkers, and their writing is interesting. But it doesn't come out that way in English because it's a second language. And I think AI can help equalize the balance by improving your English writing. So I don't really have a problem with people using AI to improve their English language, but I think it's very dangerous to let AI do the legal thinking for you.
Thank you very much, Komantri ya. Yeah. Okay, please give big applause. Yeah. Okay, the other participants. So, yes, once again, you may deliver your questions in Bahasa and English. From this side, please. Anyone? Or from the online? Anyone, you may raise your hand if you join online. There are several participants join online. If you would like to deliver questions, please raise your hand.
I just want to say that one of my students asked me, can I use AI to write my paper? And I said, if you use AI to write your paper, I will use AI to mark your paper.
Yeah, that's this is the this is the
Balas
joke of the
dendam.
yeah. Okay. The other students, perhaps, or we have also a professor. We would like to say, Professor Supati, thank you very much for joining this event today, and also other lecturers also, and the students who join online. Any other questions? If not, I would like to invite Professor Parikesit to maybe deliver some remarks. Please, Professor.
Okay, thank you so much for the time and opportunity, Bapak Budi Arsike. To Professor Tim Lindsay, thank you so much for delivering great and important knowledge about the importance of legal research methodology. So for those who didn't know the story between me and Pak Tim, I usually call him Pak Tim, and Pak Tim actually was my supervisor or promoter here for my PhD student. So I just remember when Pak Tim said that, okay, when the Indonesian students sometimes get difficulty to find what is actually the thesis statement, and then why then they often make any repetition in their work.
On
So
Okay.
I just remember I was like that at that time. And when I met with Pak Tim, and then, what did you want to write, Perry? Yeah, because Parikesit is in shorter way is called Perry. What did you want to write? Just go back at home and then prepare for one sentence only. So in my case, I can say to all of audience, both online and offline, in my case, if you can check my dissertation, for example, my dissertation is about the spatial planning regulation, and the thesis statement is so simple. I can say that why the regulation of spatial planning in Indonesia is ineffective because of legal and non-legal factors. That's it. That's it. That's simple. That's pretty simple. Don't think too much. Don't think overwhelmed. Yeah. Don't be under pressure. Yeah. By making a good and powerful thesis statement is a good start to develop your idea. And I can also try to reveal some secret between during my dissertation time, because Pak Tim also understand bahasa pretty well, sometimes we talk, more often in bahasa instead of English. So this also become important, and try to encourage that maybe people from public of, notary program or master of law program, you have opportunity to study law in Melbourne University, because I believe if you can understand what Pak Tim is saying today, just 70%, doesn't have to be 100%, 70%, then it is a good sign to start your journey overseas. Okay, because here in Faculty of Law Udayana University and in the Melbourne Law School, we already have a memorandum of understanding, and the collaboration will last pretty long. So you have more opportunity to get advantage from this cooperation. I think that's all. And thank you again, Pak Tim. I hope next year you can visit Bali, and then we can also visit Melbourne and bring some students to the University of Melbourne. Thank you.
That would be good. And Patty, I just wanted to say thank you for your kind words. Also, I want to let everybody know that Melbourne Law School is a little bit different to the other law schools in Australia because the biggest number of international students we have is from Indonesia.
Oh.
So in most other countries, in most other law schools in most other law schools in Australia, the biggest international student numbers are from China, India, or Malaysia. But at Melbourne, it's Indonesians. It's like penyerbuan Indonesia. So the Australians invade Bali, but you have invaded our law school. So we welcome Indonesian students at Melbourne. They're great students like Professor Parry, and we hope to see you all there sometime soon. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pak Tim.
Thank you very much, Pak Tim and Prof. Parikesit. So good to hear that Professor Tim Lindsay guided Professor Parikesit to make a very strong and short sentence for your PhD research. Thank you. We have students here ready for another question, so I would like to invite you. Please come here to deliver your question. Please. Don't forget to mention your name and your study program.
Jake. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Prof. Tim. I'm very grateful I can have conversation with you and I can ask my question. What I think when I in notary program in Udayana. Before I want to ask to you about my question, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Imade Hari Kurniawan. I'm from program notary in Udayana University. I'm very curious about a method in Aussie in Australia because when I in law program in Udayana, I got information law is sui generis. We have metode penelitian, normative and empiric. And I'm very curious in Aussie, what's the method used there? Is use normative or empiric or have another method? Thank you for, this is my question. Thank you for the time.
Okay, thank you, Ibade Kurniawan, for your question. That's a very interesting question. So at Melbourne Law School, we regard ourselves as interdisciplinarian. So we say that there is no one legal discipline. There are many, many multidisciplinary approaches. And there are, for example, people who write on legal theory. There are people who write on law and literature. There are people who write on law and the humanities. There are people who write pure traditional black letter doctrinal law. There are others who take a socio-legal approach to it. There are also people who write about law from a scientific point of view, looking at how law interacts with technology and so on. There are climate science people who write about law. So we would say there is no one legal discipline. Law is an area of study, and there are multiple disciplines that can be used to look at that area of law. So we would definitely say we are an interdisciplinary faculty. The second thing I would say is that there's actually no wall Tidak ada tembok antara normatif dan empirical. There's no really big distinction between them. And I'll explain what I mean. If you go and do empirical fieldwork, for example, and then you go to analyze your theoretical fieldwork, you're going to be using normative values and ideas in order to analyze and understand it. And you can't actually really easily distinguish between empirical method and normative method because they overlap. Or if you think you're doing a normative project, you can't really test the value of the law and whether it works unless you put it in a socio-legal context, and that becomes empirical. So we would usually say that most legal projects involve elements that are both normative and empirical as well, and that it's not really all that helpful to make a big distinction between them. So our position would be there are many, many different approaches and many disciplines that you can use to look at law. It depends on the question you're asking yourself. For example, if you're saying, what is the response to the law in Kalimantan? That might be an empirical question, but you're still going to have to be normative in your understanding of the actual law itself. Or if you're going to say, how does the competition law operate? That might be normative, but you're going to have to be empirical to test it. So we say that the discipline or the theoretical approach depends on the question you're asking. And that's why you need to know what the question is.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Professor Tim. Adi Kurniawan, sudah? Kira? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Professor Tim Lindsay. And any other question from audience? Moment, please. I will check online. Not yet any questions. From this offline, hello to participants. Any other questions? Maybe one more questions. It's like a coaching clinic. If you have a plan for writing an article or you are at the initial stage of drafting an article, you may, let's say, consult with Professor Tim, like what Sita Winaya did. Either in Bahasa Indonesia or in English. Anyone maybe? Maybe from Master of Law, Doctor of Law, or Bachelor of Law student, please. Anyone? No? Okay. Professor Tim, maybe we're still waiting the response from other students. I would like to hear your, if you would like to, would you kindly explain about the situations, because you are the founder and executive editor of one of the leading Australia Journal of Asian Law. Last night I checked the authors come from various countries, and you just mentioned about the current Melbourne Law School is occupied by Indonesian students. But what about your Australian Journal of Asian Law? How many percent of Indonesian authors try to submit? Because if I'm not mistaken, a few minutes ago you mentioned around 40% of the submissions are accepted to be published. Maybe I wrong.
Yeah,
but
that's right.
What about But what about the percentage of Indonesian authors,
Okay,
please?
I can answer that for you. I might just share a screen for you. Just one moment. Okay, so can you see that?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Yeah, so don't worry about the lists here. I just want to show you for the moment these two charts. So this one shows you the origins of the people who submit. And our two biggest groups of authors who submit are Indonesia at 24%, lagi penyubuan, And India equal 24%. So it's a race. And India and Indonesia are the equal leaders. And then we have Bangladesh behind at 12. And the rest are all on 6%. Malaysia, Philippines, Singapore, Vietnam on 5%, I think. Oh no, that's 6 as well. China as well, and then mixed. So Indonesia is equal top group of submissions. So please, you have to be optimistic.
Okay.
Lots and lots of Indonesian people get accepted for publication. And remember, penulis dari India, bahasanya bahasa Inggris. Sedang dari Indonesia, it's the second language. So Indonesia is doing very well. You are competing exactly with India, even though India uses English everyday life. And the second point is these are the topics that we publish on, and almost 60% are on human rights. And then we have commercial law, 12%, courts and judicial systems and judges, 12%, then environmental law at 6%, and then a mixture of other ones. So if you're an author from Indonesia and you're writing on human rights or individual rights of different sorts, you've probably got a reasonable likelihood of being published.
Okay. Well, thank you for the data. So that's
Yeah.
data not come from the AI, right?
No, that's real data.
Real data, original
That is
data
true
from you.
data. Yes, it is. It is. And also, I'll tell you one other bit of data that's really interesting.
Please.
In the period January to September this tahun ini, mulai bulan Januari sampai bulan September, we had jumlah penulis yang diterbit, ya sudah, which have been successful, 56 dari semua itu, 54 English as a second language. So dari 56, 54 ialah dari Asia, English as a second language speaker.
Wow.
Only one native English speaker published.
Okay.
Just one. And then another article by joint ESL and native English speaker. So almost all of our publications were English as a second language. So you can do it. Itu buktinya. Itu bukti konkret.
Yeah. So to all students and lecturer here, like Sita Winaya, Sita, do you want to try to submit your articles in Professor Tim journal perhaps later? Maybe, okay. Thank you very much for discovering the information about your journals. And okay, any other students or lecturers, participants to this studium generale? Any other questions maybe you would like to from this side? This side? It's okay? Proceed. Yeah. Ibu cukup ya. Bu Sagung, ampun ya. Ampun ya. Professor Lindsay, once again, it is a great honor for us to have you here. And we have listened several tips for writing. So not just summarize, because you mentioned never repeat, never repeat. But maybe I would like to just remind to the students, there are several tips from Professor Lindsay about publishing. So not start writing introductions, but conclusion first. Yeah, because introduction at the end. And also try to make a short and strong statement, like what Professor Parikasit just experienced during his PhD trajectory with Professor Tim Liste as a supervisor, as a promoter. And there are, because we are we as an Indonesian, we use Bahasa Indonesia as our national language. Professor Lindsay mentioned, do not assume the knowledge. So Mahkamah Agung or KPK, maybe the abbreviation that is not easily understood by foreign readers. So we have to try to use the common language, for example, and beware about, let's say, comparative study and case study. Yeah, you have to try, like this one song by Pink, try, and try, draft, redraft, and draft again. Good luck. So, Professor Tim Lindsay, I would like to invite you to deliver a concluding remarks to the for this Studium Generale and also for the upcoming cooperations with our law school, because you mentioned perhaps next year you will be coming here, perhaps. Okay, please, your concluding remarks.
Thank you very much to everybody. It's been a real pleasure to be here and to see old friends again and meet new friends. I put that information about the authors in this year into the chat for you, but that is proof that speaking English as a second language does not stop you from being published. The data speaks for itself. Please don't be afraid to try. You have to start somewhere. And it will not be easy. It will be very painful, I can promise you. But anything that is worth doing is worth suffering for. I think Professor Parry can support me in that view. But I would very much look forward to coming to Bali and seeing you next year, I hope. And maybe we could have a workshop where we sit down and look at people's English language articles that they would submit. And I can work with you as a mentor on those to help you prepare them for publication. Anyway, thank you. It's been a real pleasure to meet with you all, and I look forward to seeing you all again. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Lindsay.
Oh, matur suksema.
Matur suksema. Yang kembalikan ke MC. So, thank you very much once again to Professor Lindsay for becoming the speaker for this Studium Generale today, and also to the team of LPPM Unut Connect, Ibu Dr. Sagung Putri Purwani. Have the two vice deans are still here, Bapak Yuda PhD and Ibu Dr. Jayantiari here, and also Professor Parikesit Widyateja. To all committee, thank you very much for assigning me as the moderator for the Studium Generale today. And I would like to deliver the session again to the MC. Please.
Thank you, Dr. Budi. Ladies and gentlemen, please give big applause to the speaker and also moderator. The next agenda is the delivery of the certificate to our speaker. Therefore, for the committee to please display the certificate for Professor Tim Lindsay to the ceremonial process. Thank you. So, Professor Tim Lindsay, thank you very much for your participation in this event and your support to us. Now, I would like to proceed to the next agenda, which is the delivery of certificate to our moderator, Bapak Budi, which will be delivered by our Vice Dean 1 for the academic affairs. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, now we have come to the end of today's event. And may this academic forum enrich our perspective and inspire future legal research in the digital era. And then for the next agenda is, I would like to announce it in bahasa. Jadi untuk para peserta yang sudah berpartisipasi dalam acara hari ini, dipersilahkan untuk mendownload sertifikatnya secara online pada barcode
yang telah ditampilkan dalam link Zoom. Jadi silahkan difoto link Zoom-nya. Barcode-nya sudah ditampilkan untuk sertifikatnya, kemudian untuk bahan-bahan atau materi yang disampaikan oleh pembicara tadi juga bisa di-download pada barcode yang berada di sisi kanan. Baik, sekali lagi kami atas nama panitia mengucapkan terima kasih atas partisipasinya dan sampai jumpa di kesempatan berikutnya. Om Santi 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 Om.
Suatu saat nanti